Okay, so Algebra 2b, this is going to be the second part of Algebra 2. And let me start off by getting rid of this since we don't need it anymore. If you've had a chance to look at the syllabus, I'm just going to go right through it. So I'm Mr. Collier. My room number is B309. And if you ever need to reach me, my email address is going to be tcollier, T stands for Travis, right? tcollier at halifax.k12.va.us. Now, typically when I teach Algebra 2b, I'm not teaching with Bill Colbert, who you'll also see in the photo right there. But this is just going to be me for this class. He usually helps me out in other classes. But that's my email address. If you ever need to reach me, or if you want to set up an office hours appointment, that's where you'll be able to reach me the quickest. And now that I'm on the topic of office hours, let me talk about that. So I'm going to have office hours every weekday, Monday through Friday. So it's always going to be Monday through Friday at 2:15. 2:15 to 3:30. But if you need me at another time, we can start office hours at a different time if you'd like. But that's just the time that they tell everybody to start them. So you'll be able to see me at 2:15 if you want to for those office hours. And if you need the link for that, that's going to be on my Canvas homepage. It'll say office hours. Okay. So that's just a couple basic information about me and, how you can reach me, where you can get extra help for the class. But like I said, Algebra 2b is the second part of Algebra 2. This is where at the end of the year, you're going to be taking the SOL test, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to copy that down, and then we'll move on from here. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about next is the next part of the syllabus, which is course description. And I'll tell you about what topics we're going to cover, how grades are going to be done this year, and all that good stuff. Okay. All right, let's talk about the course really quick. Course description. All right, this is the second half of Algebra 2. Algebra 2. This is an SOL course, so I'll write SOL course. You'll be taking the SOL in June, from what I understand. Usually it's done in May, but we're a month behind this year, so it'll actually be happening in June. So there is going to be an SOL at the end of the course, but there's going to be no final exam. No final exam. And the reason why there's no final exam for this course is because it is not a dual enrollment course. So you're going to be taking an SOL test, but there's not going to be a final exam. All right. A little bit more about the course. Some of the topics we're going to be covering. We're going to be spending the first month talking about functions. Functions like y equals f of x. We're going to be talking about functions. We'll be talking about transformations, which you probably saw last year. We'll also be talking about how to classify functions, and functional analysis, things like domain and range, y-intercepts, x-intercepts, things like that. And then we'll be getting into combinatorics, which you'll find out what that is later. And then after that, we'll get into statistics. That'll probably be the third month. And then after statistics, I hope to spend the last 2 months of the class talking about SOL review. So all the stuff that you learned in part A and all the stuff that you learned in part B are going to be combined when you take the SOL test. So that's why that SOL review is so important. And I'll leave this up there for a little bit so you guys can get it. And then we'll talk about grades on the next slide. All right. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I did want to tell you that these Zoom meetings are being recorded. So there'll be like videos that you can watch later. If you ever happen to miss a Zoom meeting, or if you want to rewatch it again, I always record these and I put the videos on my Canvas modules so you can look at them later. And typically I try to keep these meetings under 30 minutes. Sometimes that's not possible, but I really try to keep in that 30-minute time frame. Okay, let's move on and talk about grades. How are grades going to be done this semester? Okay, so like I was saying before, there's not going to be a final exam. So what that means is your entire grade is going to be comprised of 3 different categories. You're going to have classwork. Those who had me last year know what that's like. You're going to have quizzes, and you're going to have tests. Okay, so tests are going to be 40% of your grade, 40%. And classwork and quizzes are going to be combined 60%. So it's mostly going to be weighted towards the classwork and the quizzes. The grading scale has not changed from last semester. So the grading scale is still going to be A, 100 to 90, B, 89 to 80, C, 79 to 70, D, 69 to 60, and then F is going to be 59 and below. 59 and below. So the lowest passing grade is going to be that 60 right here. Not that you're shooting for it, but that's the lowest passing grade that you can get. Okay? And that's basically grades. I'll leave this up there for a few seconds so you guys can copy that down. And then when we move on to the next slide, I'll talk about what the class is actually going to be like, how it's going to be run, and how you're going to get your grades. Okay. So grades are going to be mostly classwork and quizzes, but you're also going to have tests. Typically, I'll try to do 2 tests per 9 weeks. And then the rest is either going to be classwork or quizzes. But for the most part, I typically try to do classwork. So let's talk about that classwork on the next slide. Okay, so how is the course going to be run? So you're going to have Zoom meetings, where you're going to be taking notes. I also upload the notes to the modules. And then from the Zoom meetings, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to try the problem sets that I post. The problem sets. Now, these problem sets are going to be considered practice. They're going to be considered practice problems. And as such, they are not graded. So these are ungraded. You don't have to turn these problem sets in. But I am assuming that you're doing the problem sets. They're for your practice. And what I'll do is, most of the times when I'm doing Zoom meetings and lectures, I'll take problems from the problem sets and I'll do them during the Zoom meetings so you can see how the problems are done. And then once you feel good about the problem sets, and the way you feel good about them is I'm going to include the answers at the very end of the problem sets so you can check yourself. But again, the problem sets are just for practice. I'm not going to grade them. So they're not going to show up on your assignment list. But once you're done with the problem sets, you're going to try the classwork. You're going to try the classwork, which is going to be graded. So this is where your grades are going to come from. The classwork is usually going to be 10 questions. Sometimes I do more than 10 questions. Sometimes I do less, depending on what topic we're covering. But typically, I like to keep it around 10 questions, where you're going to show your work and your answer for each problem. So the classwork is going to be 10 questions, usually. And these are going to be graded. These are going to be graded. And that's where you're going to get your grades from. Now, besides classwork, as you know, we're also going to have quizzes. We're also going to have tests, and those are also going to be graded. But that's basically how the class is going to be run. Now, for my modules, let me divide the screen real quick. For the modules, what I'll do is I'll do them weekly, and I'll have something for you to do on Monday. I'll have something for you to do on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And then usually on Sunday, that's when your assignments are all going to be due. So your classwork is going to be due on Sunday by midnight. So please turn in your classwork by Sunday so you can avoid that late penalty. My modules are always going to be divided by day, so you know what you're going to be doing every day. Now, since this is first block, we're always going to be meeting on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 a.m. That is not going to change. That's always going to remain constant. We're always going to be meeting at 8:30 a.m. Okay? So on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about how your classwork is going to be. I'll talk about several policies that I'm going to put in place that I think really worked well last year, and I'm also going to keep them for this year. But if you have any questions about what I'm talking about on these slides, you can put them in the chat box, and usually I answer questions at the very end of the lecture. So at the end of that 30 minutes, that's when I usually answer questions. Okay? I'll leave this up there for a little bit so you can get it, and then we'll move on and talk about grading policies. Okay. So last year when I started Algebra 2A, I noticed a lot of things were working and I noticed a lot of things were not working. So on this slide, I wanted to talk about how assignments are going to be graded and what's going to be expected of you. So assignments. Okay. First of all, let's talk about the late penalty, the late work penalty. All right. So all work is going to be due on Sunday. You already know that. All work is due on Sunday. Typically, what you can do is you can do all your work on notebook paper, take a picture of it with your phone, and then upload those pictures to Canvas. I've also seen a lot of kids who will use their Chromebook to take pictures of the notebook paper, and then they upload those pictures to Canvas. That's fine too if you want to do that. Um, if I'm not able to read your writing, or if you're taking the picture from too far away and I can't see it, I'll go ahead and grade it as a 0, and I'll tell you to resubmit so I can get a better picture of what you're doing. But the late penalty is all work is going to be due on Sunday. And I'll be taking off 5 points per day. 5 points per day. So that's the late penalty. All right. Let's talk about the resubmission policy. Resubmission. So you can actually resubmit your work if you want a higher grade, because any grade lower than a 100, any grade that you get lower than a 100 can be resubmitted for a higher grade. Can be resubmitted. For a higher grade. And I found out that that really helps, because what'll happen is, instead of getting a 100, you might get a 93 for some reason. And once you figure out what you did wrong, I would get emails where kids were asking, hey, can I resubmit for a higher grade? And I told them, yeah, of course. So any grade lower than a 100 can be resubmitted for a higher grade, whether that's a classwork or a quiz or a test, doesn't matter. As long as you get it in before the due date for the assignment, you can resubmit. So any grade lower than a 100, you can try over again. Okay. All right. So that's the resubmission policy. And then let's talk about the no work policy. And then I'll have 10 minutes left to go. So the no work policy, I'll put this in quotation marks. The no work policy. Now, I know you guys would never do this, but whenever you do your 10 classwork problems for your grades, you need to show your work with your answers. So you must show work with every single answer. Must show work with every answer. If you don't do that, then you can only receive half credit. Half credit. So then I get asked the question, well, how do you show your work? Well, I'm actually going to show you how to do it on every single lecture. So the way you see me doing the work during the Zoom meetings and on my notes and on my problem sets that I include the answers for, that's the way I want you to show work with every single classwork assignment. If you just jot down an answer, I have no idea to know if you're cheating or not. So that's why I'm giving you that half credit. So you can't pass without showing work. I want you to show work for every single answer so you can get that full credit that you deserve, right? So that's the no work policy. And once again, I'll show you how to do your work. Some problems require less work than others, obviously, but that no work policy is going to be only half credit if you show no work. but if you show full work, I'll give you that full credit. So those are the 3 policies that you need to know. And I'll put stars by these. So the late penalty, the resubmission policy, and the no work policy. Those are the 3 that you need to know. Okay. So I got 10 minutes left. So let me talk about required materials, and there was something else I wanted to cover. I forgot what it was. Well, hopefully I'll remember on the next slide. But I'll keep this up there for a few seconds so you guys can copy that down. Yeah, required materials and, oh yeah, how to receive help. Okay. Let's talk about required materials. What are you going to need for the class? Basically the same things that you needed when you did part A. So let's talk about it. So you're going to need your Chromebook, obviously. You're going to need your Chromebook. You're going to need college ruled notebook paper. College ruled notebook paper. There are 2 different kinds of notebook paper. There's college ruled and there's wide ruled. Don't get the wide ruled. Get the college ruled. You can actually fit a whole lot more on the college ruled notebook paper than you can on the wide ruled. So just go ahead and get that. A 1-inch binder to keep all your stuff in. You're also going to need graph paper, especially at the end of the first month when we start graphing functions. You're going to need that graph paper. I can only find this at Walmart and on Amazon. Those are the only 2 places that I've ever found this, is Walmart and Amazon. I don't know why, but those are the only 2 places I've ever found it. So graph paper, pencil or pen, get the pencil, and a ruler, and that's it. So that's the required materials. I'll leave that up there so you guys can copy that down, and then we'll move on to the last thing. So you got your Chromebook, notebook paper, binder to put it in with your graph paper, and then pencil or pen and a ruler. That's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else. And if you need to see this again, you can either rewatch the video or look at my syllabus, because that's where I'm getting all the information from, is that syllabus. All right, so let's move on to the last slide. Okay, so how can I get help? How can I get help with all this complicated math? That's a good question. There are a couple ways. First of all, you can email me if you have a specific question about a problem on your classwork or on your problem sets. You can email me. And if that doesn't help, we can set up an appointment for office hours. Remember my office hours, 2:15. Send an email to me before you click on those office hours, because I might not be there if you don't. So you could email me, you could come to my office hours. You can look at my YouTube channel where I post all my math videos. If you want to find me, you can search Travis Collier. It's literally just my first and last name. And then, write the word math at the end of it, and it should bring me up. I post all my math videos there for every single topic we're going to cover in Part B, as well as Part A. There are also some other videos that you can watch. I know Khan Academy does a really good job with that. But those are the 3 basic ways you can get help in the class. Just make sure you get it before that due date. Okay. And the last thing we're going to talk about is what's due this week. What's due this week? Let's talk about that. Okay. So if you look at my modules, at the very end on Friday, you will see an assignment called Google Forms. So you go to modules page, you go to Friday, and then there's going to be an assignment called Google Form. Google Form. Just fill that out and submit it, and then I'll give you your first 100 classwork grade. Okay? And some of you have already done that, which is awesome. But go ahead and get that done before Sunday. That's the only assignment this week. And then next week, we'll begin with parent functions and transformations, and we'll get to all that good math stuff. Okay? And I think that's it. There's nothing else more that I want to cover. But if you have a question, go ahead and throw it down in the chat box. I usually answer those at the end of the Zoom meetings. And if you don't have any questions, then class dismissed.